Hello everyone and welcome to this 30-minute soft skills presentation entitled The State of Cloud Security 2020. Presenting today we have Richard Beckett, who is the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Sophos. As always, this whole presentation is being recorded and will be made available on Sophos Hub for our internal audience and via the partner portal for our partners. Any questions you may have as we go through the presentation, please feel free to post them via the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll be sure to address them by the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, Richard.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this soft skills on the State of Cloud Security 2020. Now, over the next 30 minutes, I'll be giving you some fantastic and unique to Sophos data points on public cloud security that you can really start to use in your sales activities. Now, the data that we'll be walking through is from a global survey commissioned by Sophos, and this reveals the reality of security incidents hitting organizations using public cloud providers, including Azure, Google, Oracle Cloud, AWS, VMware, and also Alibaba Cloud as well. And the findings are just a great way for you to start new sales conversations and start to really demonstrate that need for securing cloud environments with Sophos. Okay, so without further ado, let's start to explore the findings. Now, first up, let me tell you a little bit more about the survey. So Sophos commissioned this independent research house called Vanson Bourne to survey over 3,500 IT managers who are either currently hosting data and or workloads in public cloud environments, all about their experiences with cloud security. So it's important to note that Sophos had no role in the selection of respondents here. So these aren't customers necessarily, and all responses were provided anonymously back to us. Now, the survey itself was conducted in January and February of 2020, so just a little earlier this year. And as you can see here on screen, those respondents came from 26 countries across 6 different continents. So obviously you can see them all here. Now, within each country, 48% of those respondents were from organizations between 100 and 1,000 employees, while 52% of organizations were between 1,001 and 5,000 employees. So really representative of the market. Now, respondents also came from a range of sectors, as you can see here, so a mixture of both public and private sectors included in those responses. Okay, so a little sort of introduction over, let's get straight into it. Now, I want to start by looking at the level of cloud attacks in the last year. And this is, pretty worrisome. 20% of respondents said they'd actually suffered a public cloud security breach in the last year. So, this is very worrying. 96% of all respondents are also expressing concern about their current level of security across those 6 major cloud provider platforms that we ran through earlier, including the big 3, where we're talking about Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. So organizations are having some real challenges out there. Now, if we start to break that headline down, the attack type should all be very familiar to you. Now, among organizations suffering a cyber attack in the cloud, the breakdown of attack types kind of really reads like the usual suspects here. You've got malware, data breaches, ransomware attacks, all taking our top spots in terms of the most prevalent attack types. Now, it's probably just worth noting here that respondents could actually select multiple options within this survey if you were starting to wonder why those percentages didn't add up to 100%. Now, these top attack types, they were really echoed in our recent State of Ransomware 2020 survey results as well. And in that report, it showed 59% of successful ransomware attacks where the data was encrypted involved data in the public cloud as well. So it's just really underlying how those unfortunately successful tactics of criminals are moving to the cloud as organizations themselves move as well. And hopefully it should help yourselves that these are familiar attack types that are being played out in the cloud. So there's not necessarily anything new to learn here. You can take those same pictures that you're currently using on-prem or in a private data center setups and move those over to the cloud as well to have those conversations. Now, if I break that level of threat down by country, you'll start to see that India, with its 227 respondents, fared the worst, unfortunately. You got 93% of organizations there being hit by an attack in the last year. Now, unfortunately, this is a pretty consistent theme through the data when we actually broke this down by the individual attack types, where India was kind of regularly in the top 3, should I say, of most affected organizations. So it just really indicated a bit of a lack of sort of cyber hygiene, if you like, creating weaknesses in cloud security configurations, which make those organizations more vulnerable to attack. Now, that trend of the highest proportion of attacks really echoes throughout Asia Pacific region itself, with the highest regional rates of exposed data hitting 35% of organizations, ransomware attacks affected 37%, and account compromise attacks 33% among those survey respondents. Now, on the flip side of that, Europeans with, this is obviously a collection of multiple countries, so a larger data set here. It was 1,259 respondents from Europe. They actually suffered the lowest percentage of security incidents in the cloud. And we really believe that's an indicator that compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR guidelines, they're really starting to help organizations from being compromised. Those regulations are making them better prepared and a harder target for attackers. Now, if I move into Middle East and Africa, here we had 360 respondents. And they actually had some of the lowest attack rates there outside of Europe. So this is perhaps the result of more sort of geo-targeted attacks that are going after the perception, maybe more lucrative countries outside of Middle East and Africa. However, the value here is really in the eye of the beholder. Here, what we saw is cryptojacking is actually at its highest among all regions, affecting kind of 1 in 5 organizations. As criminals start to spin up their hundreds of virtual machines to start running illegal crypto mining and escape before being discovered. So it really just shows that attackers aren't necessarily going after the traditional targets, the geo-targeting of countries that may have more sensitive or valuable data or personal information, for instance. They are also going after your processing power, your ability to just pay an Amazon bill that they can exploit. Now, if I move on to the United States, last of all, we had 413 respondents here. And really, United States reported actually surprisingly few incidents, despite being the largest group of survey respondents here. It was actually in the lower third of countries suffering security incidents in the last year. And, as an advanced kind of Western country, it could be considered quite a lucrative target, obviously. Yet only 30% of respondents were hit by malware, 31% by ransomware, 28% suffering a data breach, and 21% having cloud account credentials compromised. So contributing factors here really point to more of a clear ownership of security, which we can all learn from, with 90% of organizations understanding their responsibility for cloud security that shared responsibility model between you and the cloud provider. And also 80%, oh, sorry, should I say 85% of organizations here were actually aware of all of their cloud assets in the US. So that is a full 17 percentage points higher than the global average. So obviously, if you can see everything that you have a much better chance of being able to secure it in the first place. So the importance of visibility playing a role there as well. Now, I'll share the URL for this full report a little later on in the session, and in there you can see a breakdown of each attack type that I've run through there and a full report to see how those different countries actually stacked up. Okay, so now let's look at how criminals are breaching the cloud, how the criminals are getting into environments in the first place, because I think you'll see this is a bit different in the cloud that you might be used to. Here, accidental exposure continues, unfortunately, to plague organizations. And this is reflected in our survey respondents. Security gaps in misconfigurations are actually exploited in 66% of attacks here, while 33% of attacks use stolen credentials for the cloud provider accounts themselves to get in. Now, when it comes to the cloud, it's really best to think of your network like a building with multiple windows, multiple openings. They're all going to add up to multiple potential access points for someone or something to get out. So for an example, a misconfigured route table on your organization's firewall is going to leave the window open to attackers. And then virtual machines running private server workloads or maybe hosting sensitive data. And now suddenly they're going to become accessible from the internet. If you like to think of it as they are now one step closer to the attackers, you made their job just that bit easier. And with that, they can search for and they can find these weak points in security posture that they can use to get into the environment. Now, as organizations start to introduce new cloud services in order to provide things like shared storage or containers, database services, serverless functions, for instance, the potential for misconfigurations only increases, which in turn is going to expand an organization's attack surface. Now, every organization is going to represent value to the cyber criminal. Now that value may be in the data that can be sold on or held to ransom. It could be the organization's wallet, used to pay for crypto mining virtual machines. And while in the real world, attacks based on GDP or maybe an industry sector might be the norm, isn't as clear cut in the cloud. Here, an organization's security posture is often the deciding factor when it comes to choosing an entry method or a weak point. And we can really see that when it comes to how organizations are targeted. So when we look here across the world, when we look at South Africa and Japan, I'll call those out, these showed the highest numbers of stolen cloud provider account credentials in our survey. But on the reverse of that, these organizations also have among the highest levels of cloud asset visibility across their environments, which starts to suggest that a stronger security posture overall is going to give you less chance of having misconfigurations in the first place. So in that case, if I can see all my assets and I'm less likely to introduce misconfigurations, cloud account credentials are the softer target, and that's why we see them higher here. Turkey and Poland, they show the reverse of this with the lowest levels of visibility of assets. And these organizations were most likely to be targeted by misconfigured cloud assets or through misconfigured cloud assets, again, which attackers can automate their searches to find. So you start to see how attackers are kind of joining these dots up. Okay, so now let's turn our attention to one of the biggest concerns for organizations, And in doing so, you really start to see that organizations, unfortunately, are still focused primarily on the outcome, not necessarily the root cause of the issue. And that's something we really need your help to help to educate customers about. Now, if we look at the top concerns here, data leaks top the list of security concerns for nearly half of all respondents at 44%, with identifying and responding to security incidents a close second, down there at 41%. Now, the rapid growth of cloud usage has really resulted in quite a fractured distribution of data and alerts. So 73% of organizations are now utilizing at least 2 public cloud platforms from our survey. And this multi-cloud approach really compounds that visibility challenge for teams who often need to now switch between multiple platforms and multiple different consoles for a complete picture of what they have running in the cloud and the security alerts that are generated as a result. So to address the root causes, organizations must really leverage platform tools more effectively and extend them with third-party services. Now, that requires skilled experts, either employed directly by the organization or through partners like Sophos. Now, unfortunately, while 70% of organizations in our survey suffered a security breach in the last year, only a quarter see lack of staff expertise as a top concern, which is a real worry for us. So that is one of the major root causes. If you aren't configuring these environments and utilizing those tools effectively, you're obviously going to have potentially more weaknesses and a higher chance of being breached. But from a security perspective, or your perspective, this really creates a strong opportunity for Sophos partners to obviously support these organizations. Now, security risks inevitably are going to multiply an organization's attack surface, and as they start to expand the number of cloud environments that they're running. Now, 73% of organizations, as I mentioned, surveyed were using 2 or more public cloud providers. And they reported up to twice as many security incidents as those using one cloud. So this isn't to say that multi-cloud is, it isn't to say that this needs to be the case. Multi-cloud is a necessity for a number of organizations. But when planning your strategy, it's really important to ensure your architecture is secure, it's configured correctly, and you have the right visibility of assets, and importantly, the security alerts generated. So ideally, you're going to be aggregating, you're going to be prioritizing that information in a single view to help your teams to see where to focus and where to address weak points quickly, and also where to address active threats within your environment as quickly as well. Okay, so now let's move on to the recommendations from our survey. And really what you need to be doing here to stay secure in the cloud. So I want you to start with the assumption that attackers will find cloud assets. Criminals are automating their searches for vulnerable cloud services, whether an organization has used the cloud for some time or has maybe recently accelerated the use with that surge in remote working that we've all been having to go through. Accurate visibility of cloud assets in use is the only way to really ensure they are configured securely and protected against threats. Next up, invest in cloud workload protection with anti-malware technology. 70% of survey respondents suffered a security incident in the last year. And among that, 34% were hit by malware, 22% hit by ransomware, so just another form of malware, 17% hit by cryptojacking, which can also be malware, right? So, and if we, I mean, that's individuals. If we look at the unique responses across our data set, 50% of those organizations attacked had suffered some form of malware related incident. So a big problem. Really highlights that malware is one of the #1 threats still here in the cloud, either for the organization or the sensitive data that they hold. So invest in that anti-malware technology. Next up, protect your data wherever it's held. Data protection, as you saw there, is the biggest concern for organizations. Almost 60% of ransomware attacks in the last year successfully encrypted data, including data in the public cloud. So cloud strategies really should include protecting data in the cloud, private cloud, or on premises. And lastly, continually monitor those cloud resource configurations and the access into environments. 2/3 of survey respondents here were compromised through misconfigured cloud resources, giving the attacker access. It allowed them to exploit these weaknesses to carry out that malicious activity. So proactive monitoring of configurations and access into environments by a security team can really significantly reduce the likelihood of a breach being able to take hold. So this is obviously where the Sophos Cloud Security portfolio comes in. Now, at a high level, here's how I would walk a prospect through our portfolio and how they should be thinking of a layered defense in the cloud. So the foundation to secure your organization, you need to know what you got running in the cloud. This is where Sophos Cloud Optics provides a complete inventory of what you have running in the cloud, so your virtual machines, your storage, etc., and then analyzes it for vulnerabilities, so you can fix any security holes. Now, it also identifies overprivileged user IAM roles and access that can be compromised by an attacker, as well as connecting more disparate actions to identify unusual cloud account access patterns and login locations, for instance, all in near real time to start identifying signs of credential theft of those cloud accounts. So really important. Now, next we need to secure our cloud workloads. And with that, we have InterceptX for server. So that protects your virtual machines, the virtual desktops running on those virtual machines for your remote workers, as well as auto scaling groups that allow you to spin up and spin down new servers on demand to cope with increased demand or reduced demand. And this is where InterceptX is protecting them all from the latest threats, including ransomware, firewallless attacks, server-specific malware. It works exactly the same as it does on premises from a protection point of view against threats, but also includes more server or cloud-specific functionality, including things like server lockdown. So when you have your virtual machine set up just as you want it, you can lock that configuration down in a single click. Now, to protect the network edge from threats, we have XG Firewall. Now, XG Firewall secures your inbound and your outbound traffic to your virtual network and, importantly, to your virtual desktop environments as well. And it's going to provide secure remote access as well for people like administrators and developers to access private applications running on virtual machines in the cloud. And as you'd expect from us, this is all managed from a single console from Sophos Central, enabling you to protect and analyze and report on AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud security posture, all from one place. But where do you start? Okay, the outcome of this. Well, we really recommend giving your customers a health check with a free cloud security check using the Cloud Optics 30-day free trial. What this is going to do is give you an inventory of everything you've got running in the cloud. So your virtual machines, your storage, your containers, your IAM roles. It's going to cover Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, Kubernetes, infrastructure as code environments as well, and automatically scan them for security and compliance gaps so you can address those weaknesses even during the trial. And best of all, there are no agents to install here. There's no tie-in at all. This is all a free trial, so nothing to lose here, only really to gain in terms of understanding where the weaknesses are in your cloud environments. Now, that's the pitch. But what I want to be able to do as well is help you handle the kind of the ifs, the buts, and the no's. So I've decided to outline 3 kind of core objections that I think you might come across when talking about cloud optics and public cloud security and how to overcome them. So we'll just spend the last few slides on this. So first, it's all about the native cloud provider tools. This is, I think, where you will see the majority of the competition, not necessarily from a third-party vendor. It's more from AWS and Azure and Google, for instance, what they include by default. So the point here is the likely question of, doesn't AWS already provide everything that Cloud Optics does? Well, the answer is no. AWS has no real CSPM solution. Now, CSPM stands for Cloud Security Posture Management and is the defined, the recognized term for tools offering what Cloud Optics does that we just run through. And as you can see here, AWS has a very small CSPM feature set. It's existing in different services, but really not sufficient to attain the security benefits that you're going to get with Cloud Optics. So not only much easier to manage all in one place, but also much more comprehensive as well. Now it's a similar story for Azure, where we have multiple products not adding up to what you're getting with Cloud Optics. Now, there's one place I'll draw your attention to here, and that's Azure Security Center, because I think this is quite interesting and important for you. What Security Center is going to do is every time you introduce a new resource, that'll evaluate that from a security perspective within 15 minutes for any new resource. And then after that, it'll evaluate it every 24 hours. So it will scan those resources every 24 hours. And we tested this. So this is not great if you have quite a dynamic environment, maybe development teams utilizing new services, spinning up, spinning down, making changes. You want to keep on top of that security posture on a much more frequent basis. Then you'll likely find organizations hoping to build a Cloud Optics type service themselves, right? And for that, we have a very helpful white paper and an online calculator. You'll get a link to this, you'll get this presentation after. So I've included a link down here to the Sophos Cloud Optics ROI calculator, or you could just Google that and you'll find it yourself now. And that will basically allow you to build a very clear business case for Cloud Optics, both from a security and a compliance team point of view, to show you how by surfacing alerts earlier, making remediation easier for those teams, helping produce reports on demand, that we're really starting to give those teams a lot of benefits that they can equate into save time and therefore value or money back, if you like, virtual money back to the organization. Now, the main points to address here when a customer talks about building their own is that investing internal time and resources may sound attractive at the outset. The reality is it's going to involve connecting multiple point products, multiple consoles, and is likely to lack that comprehensive visibility required to address these high priority challenges. And lastly, it's the tough one, right? I don't have budget. The good news is this is where Intercept X for Server with EDR is now coming to the rescue. Now, earlier, we established that malware is one of our biggest threats in the cloud. Server or workload protection, as it's known in the cloud, organizations need it. Okay, well, they need all of it, but they know they need this, and it's a well understood threat that they're already safeguarding themselves against on-prem and would be in the cloud as well. Now, the great news is here, as we covered in detail during last week's soft skills, so please check that out, the recording there if you haven't already. The good news here is that Intercept X Advanced for server with EDR and Cloud Optics are joining forces. They are extending protection beyond server workloads, offering a strong set of Cloud Optics capabilities to start to secure other critical cloud services in AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, and all in the same server license. So no extra cost here, so no extra budget, right? Now, by design, we're including a powerful set of Cloud Optics capabilities there to add value to the server EDR offering, while creating opportunities for upgrades to the full Cloud Optics license. So this will allow you, importantly, to provide that cloud inventory assessment, that security check that we mentioned earlier with Cloud Optics, but as part of an organization health or their security posture, if you like. Now, this is all available from the 23rd of July in Sophos Central, so just tomorrow, and it'll be available for new server EDR customers and trials, and you can even start to activate this for existing server EDR customers as well. So, on that, I will end today's session. I'll end it on a high note, hopefully, with that good news. And open up to any questions that we might have if we have any time for that. Now, I'll just draw your attention to that URL on screen. That is where you can download the full State of Cloud Security 2020 report. It's completely ungated, so there's no information you need to hand over to get your hands on that. So go and check out the site. There's even a nice handy comparison guide where you can start to compare different countries to see how you stack up on a global point of view. Okay, I would just see if we have.
Thank you, Richard, and no questions so far. And with that, I think we're also a little past time. So really appreciate you guys joining in, and we'll be sure to send out the recording and slide deck shortly. Right, thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.